My name is Brent Anderson. I am interviewing our 6th grade ELA teacher on her steps in preparing for a PLC meeting. Okay, Ms. Porter.
Yes.
All right, you guys have to go over to the PLC meeting with lessons for the week or lesson plans or something like that, correct?
We sometimes talk about lesson plans. For example, this past PLC meeting, we had a meeting to discuss updating our pacing calendars, just ensuring that we have covered every single TEK prior to our STAR test administration. And then we discussed our STAR Blitz and what low TEKs we are going to be targeting to make sure that some of our bubble kids can get pushed over the edge.
Okay. Well, let's just to I know that we got STAR coming up, and I know that there's a lot of preparation in that, but like rewinding time just a little bit, like to some of your more.
Yes.
So like what specific points or questions, like when you go over to the meetings, like is there something that happened either the week before or something that you project will happen in the current week's lessons that prompts you to come up with talking points or discussion points or questions or?
Yes, so we do have meeting objectives and we get this in advance. We also talk about what we're going to be discussing the next week. For example, we had a meeting probably earlier this school year where we discussed what we are teaching in our classes and how we are engaging students in the material. And we had to bring writing samples, student work, and also we had to prepare a lesson that we would teach in class, and we had to teach it to the PLC committee. And we critique each other, we discussed, hey, I really like that, and we were able to all take away something from someone else's lesson that we could utilize in our own classroom.
Are there like lessons and everything? I mean, activities?
We often will talk about it's really different throughout the year. We've done learning walks where we've observed high school teachers. We've done writing samples. We just overall hit all the points of teaching ELA.
See, and this is actually a little bit different probably than a lot of the students in this class, whereas on our campus, we don't have a team of 6th grade teachers. We don't have a team of grade level teachers. We have basically 3 ELA teachers, 6th, 7th, 8th. So you 3 are working together, correct? When you go to these meetings, do you take into account things that should be or need to be addressed that may be cross grade level preparation?
Yes, we've talked several times about how to take like writing essays, for example. We've discussed the points on how to cross-curricular write. So we talk about, well, how can math have the kids write? What can science do? What can social studies do? And then throughout the day, because we're first thing in the morning, throughout the day they will discuss that.
You're the first
PLC in the morning,
okay.
Yes. So throughout the day, they'll have those points already ready to go to make with the other subject levels. So math, I believe, science is after me, and then math, and it's science and social studies, I believe, at the same time, and then it's math and whatnot. So we've discussed, like, for example, back in February, we had a PLC meeting where we reviewed student ECRs and the rubric, and we compared several writing samples with no names on it. We didn't have anything written on it, and all the teachers and the administrators had to read it, and we had to look for those criteria.
I think I was at that meeting.
I think so, yes.
Okay, well, so like me, I'm teaching 6th grade technology, and without you and I have discussed previously, it's just something that I always do. Speaking of cross-curricular stuff, like for instance, in my class, we will often, I will have the students do like short writes or summary type stuff based on a current event article or something like that. So it's kind of hitting, like they're having to build writing skills somewhat doing that. Can you give me an example of how you may do some cross-curricular writing in one of the other core subject areas like math? That would be a tough one for me.
That would be tough, but for social studies, we had done nonfiction, and we had read a novel about chasing Lincoln's killer, so it was about John Wilkes Booth. So they had to write a historical piece of writing where they had to research points of history that related to Booth and the assassination, and they had to connect what they've learned in the past from social studies and world history. They've had to learn different things in world history and like what parts of the country did this happen in, and they had to hit those points historically. So I tied history into my English class. And I think there was a point one day, I think you had a writing piece, or you had a writing prompt that they had to do. I can't remember what it was. And some of the kids were like, I just don't understand this. And I said, okay. So I actually took the prompt. They showed me what the prompt was. And I ended up just, because I think it was like a catch-up day. So like the kids were catching up on their writing. They were finishing their essays. So what I did was I took the prompt and I went up to the front and I started to break it down with them. And I'm like, well, what would you need to know about this topic? Well, he gave you this topic, you're in technology, so use your resources. What can you look up to help you answer this? And what is this prompt even asking you? And so some of them were more understanding of the writing that you had assigned them. So it was, and it was some of those that were like, I don't understand, they probably did, but it was a learning moment, so.
All right, with two questions. First, do you encourage using resources like technology, like
I encourage them to use encyclopedias, the dictionary. I have two thesauruses in my room. I encourage them to look for words that are different, that mean the same but are different than the words that they're using to try and enhance their writing. Yeah, I definitely encourage trying to find an encyclopedia. Go look for a newspaper. Use the internet, which is our greatest resource,
right.
But they're not allowed to use Wikipedia.
Well, yeah.
They have to use like .org, edu.
I tell my students the same. I say, don't let Wikipedia be your only source.
Yeah. Now, sometimes you can find good information, and if you
Sure.
can validate, and I tell them, if you can validate that information that you found on Wikipedia is valid, because you found other sources that support the exact same thing, then, you know, if it's right there, then yes, you can use it. But you have to be able to support that it is good information,
right.
And it's not just something that somebody wrote.
Okay, second question to that point. So you mentioned a cross-curricular assignment regarding chasing Lincoln's killer with our social studies teacher. Are these teachers also including assignments in their room that is so I understand that you have your kids using a writing prompt about something they learned in history. Are the history teachers including things in their classroom that is useful for you?
Yes. So something Mr. Massey did that I thought was really, really cool, it was very interesting to read, was he had they had to write an argumentative essay, which was something we had just recently done. And they had to write a argumentative piece on whether they felt, well, he gave them a scenario. He said the scenario was that the school board had passed a policy that girls and boys were completely separated. Boys were on one side of this hallway, girls were on the other, and they were not allowed to interact in any way.
I agree.
And if they, I mean, it would probably solve some problems, but you know, history's proven we can't do that. So, they had to argue whether they agreed, yeah, boys should be by themselves, or, you know, yeah, girls should be, no, I don't agree with that. I bet
those were entertaining.
They were. And he said, surprisingly, the boys were like, no, I want to be mixed. I want to be around the girls. And he said the girls were like, heck yeah, let's separate.
No, I'm not surprised by that at all.
So I wasn't surprised. But they wrote like 2 pages of an essay, like front and back of a piece of notebook paper. Like, it was very surprising. And they were very entertaining, and the way that they articulated their thought was exciting to see. And I was excited that they had like the opportunity to just freely, and whether they realized it or not, they were using those skills that they were learning for argumentative text on a topic that was interesting.
Okay, so these points that we're talking about now, like still the whole purpose of this is we're talking about PLC preparation. So the points that we're talking about now, how do you go to the PLC meeting with, like, are there similar thoughts and ideas and strategies with the 7th grade ELA teacher, with the 8th grade ELA teacher?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I know Miss Sexton has talked with other teachers, and I know science and social studies for sure have the kids write, and they discuss like how they could support each other in classes and whatnot. And I know Miss Steele does the same.
Okay, so I haven't actually ran one of the PLC meetings. Obviously, I've sat in on several, but how does, okay, so our current principal, she facilitates these meetings.
Actually,
or whoever feels.
Amy, she has started to facilitate them.
Okay,
the past few months.
so it's kind of being allowed to let the teachers kind of take charge and.
Well, she's technically our department head.
She's the department head, okay.
So she's the one that runs the meeting. I'd probably throw up if I had to do that.
Okay, so since she is the 8th grade ELA teacher, and she's on paper the department head, and she's quote unquote facilitating these meetings, how comfortable do the rest of you necessarily have to be with? So like, you're the 6th grade ELA teacher, obviously your TEKs are a little bit different. How comfortable do you have to be with 7th grade year at a glance, 8th grade year, like those TEKs that scaffold their junior high experience?
The TEKs are pretty much the same for the most part, but they're just harder. Like for example, like for inferencing, the questioning would probably, the wording and the questioning would be a little bit more difficult. The level of text that they would have to infer with would be much more difficult than a 6th grader would have. So we have the same TEKs, but they are harder. Every year they grow up. Like for example, I did a novel at the beginning of the year, probably wasn't as hard as Hatchet, or a book that Miss Steele did.
So you're talking is like higher grade level reading?
Yes, it's higher reading levels, like harder text, and more in-depth and more complex concepts.
Okay, are you guys, is it the responsibility of you guys to, like, are you told on this TEK, on this point, on this writing feature, you as the 6th grade teacher, you are responsible for this, which is basically an introductory type whatever, and then we will build on that as a 7th grade student, and then we will build on that as, so.
Yes, it is our responsibility.
Okay, so that's something that you guys discuss?
Yes. And we sit down and we talk about, like, if I choose a harder text, like I have an honors class, so I chose a more difficult text for them to read, and I had to talk with 7th and 8th grade to make sure that it wasn't a novel that they were planning on reading.
Okay.
Because it is a higher level text, I had to talk with them, make sure that it was not a book that they were planning on reading with their students. So that way it's not repetitive.
And again, this is mostly discussed in PLC meetings.
Yes,
do you guys ever talk outside of meetings?
Oh yeah, we meet sometimes just on our own accord. But we mostly meet in PLCs, but we will meet individually as a grade level, or not as a grade level, as a department.
Right.
Just so we can, we talk a little more freely. We talk about, we can be a little more free when it comes to talking about some specific student difficulties, just so, hey, what's working for your student? And we still do that in PLCs, but we don't. We often meet outside of PLCs as well, just to make sure we're being proactive for our kids.
Now, I know that, okay, so you and I have the same conference period. The PLC that happens on our conference period is obviously your PLC, so the PLC meetings that I go to are ELA mostly. Do you know, or have you heard anyone say, are the other core subject area PLC meetings similar to what we're talking about? I know you can't speak for.
I have heard like that they are similar. Obviously the content's different, so like math is gonna talk a little bit different.
Yeah, and math's gonna be quite a bit different than.
Yeah, so, but they still talk about the same concepts, like, what are you doing for students? Do you have some samples of their work? Like for math, it would be more for her showing like samples of students working out the problems. Are they following the steps to get to the correct answer? Do they know what they're expected to do and whatnot? So I would wager that that's probably what they would talk about in their PLC. So.
Okay, well, I have a whole list of questions here that I knew I wasn't going to get to all of, but there's the bell, and we have concluded a very productive. And I thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hopefully we can at some point discuss further, maybe.
Yeah, I could talk to you Thursday if you wanted to do the other questions.
We might. I'm still gonna I'm gonna play around with what exactly I need to get on video for my class. Okay. But I'll let you know.
All right.
Thank you.